You've checked the phone 11 times in the last hour. You know it's 11 because you hate yourself a little more each time. The test results that come Thursday. The reply that hasn't arrived. The interview decision within 2 weeks. The offer, the diagnosis, the verdict, the visa, the callback, the person making up their mind about you. Whatever it is, you are inside the worst room in the human mind, the waiting room. And notice what waiting is doing to you. You can't work. You start tasks and slide off them. You can't rest. Rest feels like lying down on train tracks. You reread the sent message, hunting for the fatal word. You draft the follow-up you know you shouldn't send. You bargain. You rehearse both outcomes. You refresh. Here's the humiliating truth at the center of it. You would rather do almost anything than wait. Scientists once put people alone in a room with nothing but their thoughts and a button that delivered a painful electric shock. And many of them, within minutes, chose at least one shock. Some chose it again. The study wasn't about waiting for a verdict. It was about how hard unstructured time alone with your own mind can become. But you recognize the animal in that room. Something in the human animal experiences nothing to do but wait as an emergency, and will grab the wrong action, the premature text, the panic decision, even pain, just to end the unbearable pause. Which raises tonight's question in its true form. Not, how do I make the waiting shorter? You can't, and every app promising to has lied to you. The real question, is there a way to stand inside the pause that doesn't feel like slow suffocation? Before I tell you what the old book says, tell me where you're standing. What are you waiting for, right now? You don't have to say what it is if it's tender, but put your position on the ladder in the comments. Meadow, sand, mud, or blood. You won't know which one yet. Just notice which word already feels like yours. 3,000 years ago, the observers who mapped every human situation devoted an entire chapter to exactly this room. It's the 5th chapter of their book. That early, that fundamental, and its central instruction is so scandalous, so opposite to everything your clenched, refreshing, vigilant waiting looks like, that when I first read it, I laughed out loud. The ancients looked at a person in an unbearable wait and prescribed dinner. Welcome back to the valley. The book, the I Ching, the Book of Changes, 64 chapters for the 64 rooms of a human life. Tonight, chapter 5. It's called Shu, Waiting, and its image is the one you've been living under all week without seeing it. Clouds rising into heaven, the sky heavy, dark, saturated, the storm assembled but not yet breaking, rain gathering beyond the reach of your hands. Stop on that image, because the ancients loaded it. Notice what gathering clouds are not. They are not an empty sky. They are not the absence of rain. They are rain in progress, rain in its cloud stage, doing the invisible work of becoming heavy enough to fall. Stand in the field and scream at a cloud, and it will not rain 1 second sooner. The waiting this chapter describes has a spine in it, not the blankness of nothing, but the pressure of not yet. And already, the chapter has diagnosed half your suffering, because be honest about what your waiting room feels like. It feels like an empty sky, a void where nothing is happening, where the answer doesn't exist yet, and your vigilance is somehow required to summon it. The ancients say, wrong picture. Something is happening. The clouds are stacking. The committee is deliberating. The cells are being cultured. The person is turning you over in their mind. The rain is being assembled somewhere you cannot see. Your weight becomes unbearable when you mistake clouds for void. A storm has shape. Nothing has teeth everywhere. So what does a wise person do under the gathering clouds? The image of the hexagram, the line where the ancients always placed their counsel, says this, nearly verbatim, because you need to hear how plain it is. Clouds rise up to heaven, the image of waiting. Thus the superior person eats and drinks and is joyous and of good cheer. There's the dinner. Under a sky swollen black with rain, the instruction is, set the table, eat well, drink. The text actually says this, cheerful, now. Your clenched waiting room self hears that as either mockery or denial. It's neither, and the logic underneath is steel. The part of the rain schedule beyond your reach does not move because you pace. What is not fixed is the condition you're in when it falls. Rain, when it comes, brings the crossing. The answer arrives and suddenly everything must be done at once. The decision, the response, the new life beginning that hour. The one lever you hold during the cloud stage is whether the person who meets that moment is nourished, rested, and steady, or a hollow-eyed wreck who spent 3 weeks refreshing themselves into paste. Eating and drinking here isn't indulgence, it's readiness maintenance, fortifying the troops before the weather turns. The feast under the storm clouds is the most strategic act available. And the vigilance you've been performing instead, the ancients would say gently, guards nothing. There is no burglar. There is only weather. Then the chapter moves through 6 lines. The first 4 map something brutally practical. Your distance from the thing you're waiting on. Waiting in the meadow. Far from the edge. Out in open grass. Living your ordinary life while the clouds do their work. The text. Abide in the everyday. No blame. This is where the dinner happens. Waiting on the sand. Closer now. The riverbank. Here, says the text, the gossip starts. The have you heard anything? The helpful speculators. Your own mind joining them. Verdict. Some discomfort, but stay calm, and it ends well. Waiting in the mud. Too close. You've crept to the water's edge of a thing you cannot cross yet. And the text says, this position invites robbers. Hold your own weak against that. The refresh spiral, the 11th check, the reread of the sent message. That's the mud, and it robs you precisely as promised. Your sleep, your work, your dignity, sometimes the outcome itself. Because desperation leaks. And the follow-up text sent from the mud has lost deals and love affairs since the Bronze Age. Waiting in blood. The extreme case, weights that are wounds. The biopsy, the custody ruling, the news from the war. The line does not tell you to pretend the wound is dinner. It says, get out of the pit. Do not thrash so wildly that you miss the opening. Let composure make you responsive enough to recognize the way out when it appears. One ladder, and every weight you'll ever endure has an address on it. The suffering, notice, often scales not only with the stakes, but with the distance. Then the 5th line returns to the table, waiting amid food and drink. Not because the storm was imaginary, because nourishment is part of how a human being remains ready beneath it. Firmness here, the text says, brings good fortune. Then, at the very top of the chapter, the ancients placed one of the strangest and most quietly comforting scenes in the entire book. The top line begins in the pit, and one possible lived reading is the wait's worst case. The answer came, and it was no. The rain, when it finally fell, fell as flood. And then, paraphrased, 3 uninvited guests arrive. Honor them, and in the end, good fortune. 3 strangers, unlooked for, at the door of your disaster. The text never names them. A modern way to hear that silence is this. What actually arrives at the end of a long wait is very often not the thing you were waiting for. The job says no, and the rejection unlocks the move you'd never have dared. The person doesn't choose you, and the empty room is where you finally meet yourself. The diagnosis is bad, and the strangers it brings are a depth of love from your people you would otherwise have died never knowing. This is not everything happens for a reason. The book is far too unsentimental for that, and some guests arrive carrying grief. The interpretation is narrower and harder. The wait's true delivery may be unrecognizable at the door, and whether it becomes fortune depends on the single verb the text chooses, whether you honor what actually showed up or leave it on the step because it wasn't what you ordered. You've been waiting for one specific parcel. The chapter's last word, watch the door with open hands, which exposes, finally, the lie underneath the entire waiting room, the one assumption that makes the pause unbearable, and that this chapter exists to dissolve. The assumption that waiting time is dead time, a gap between the real parts of your life. You've been treating these weeks as a corridor, ugly, fluorescent lit, existing only to be gotten through. And corridors are unbearable precisely because nothing in you is allowed to live there. Every hour is merely subtracted from the arrival. Now look at what the ancients did across this whole chapter, image by image. Clouds, not the gap before rain, rain forming. Dinner, not distraction from the wait's proper work. The meadow, not exile from your real life continuing. Even the pit's uninvited guests, not the void after the answer, the actual answer, wearing a coat you didn't recognize. Every single image insists on the same heresy. There is no corridor. The wait was never a gap between the parts of your life. The wait is your life, in its cloud stage, one of its real seasons, with its own assignments. Nourish, root, Hold distance, keep the table set. The suffering was never in the pause. The suffering was in your refusal to live during it, in standing at existence's window declaring, "This doesn't count," while it counted, hour by hour, like everything else. And here's the proof the chapter was never preaching passivity. Its judgment ends with an active sentence. It furthers one to cross the great water. The waiting chapter, endorsing the great crossing. Because that was the point all along. The one who waits like this, fed, steady, meadow-distanced, open-handed, isn't postponing life. They're ripening toward the exact moment the clouds break, so that when the rain finally comes, they cross. Not the strongest swimmer, the readiest one. Clouds that are rain in progress, dinner under a dark sky, a ladder of distances, meadow, sand, mud, blood. 3 strangers at the door of the worst case. And the oldest answer to the unbearable pause. The wait is not the gap in your life. It is your life, thickening. Next time, the chapter about the strangest self-betrayal in the valley. Why you sabotage yourself right before you succeed. The ancients drew it as wood growing up through earth, effortless rise, and hidden in it is the real reason your hand trembles at the finish line. It isn't fear of failing, it's the other one. But before you go, return to the ladder. Has your position changed while we've been here? Where are your feet now? Meadow, sand, mud, or blood? And if you find someone in the comments waiting in the mud tonight, you know what we do in this valley. Lower a bucket. Remind them about dinner. If this valley helps you wait differently, subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll know when the next chapter arrives. The clouds, for what it's worth, are further along the no-look.